Great. Thank you so much, Anshu, and thank you, Mr. Prabhu, for your opening remarks, which are much more than opening remarks, because in a sense, I think that with those comments, the debate is really sort of over. I'm not even sure there really is a debate, to be honest. We're all among friends here, and I think the ground, the common terrain, is actually visible, and we are all more or less on it. Let me make an effort to kind of demarcate that common terrain. I think Mr. Prabhu put it nicely. He says, "Don't commit what is not really possible, what is not in the realm of reality." But certainly, let's not say don't do anything. And I think that those boundaries really demarcate pretty much, I would suspect, what most of at least the people who Anshu has identified as sort of in kickoff speakers, we all more or less occupy that terrain. I think the issue with the net zero, we use shorthands a lot here. So it's not really net zero as an abstract concept. It's net zero by 2050. That is the political statement on the table. And that's a political statement because the IPCC says net zero by 2050 is what we have to globally strive for. Many countries have said we will do net zero by 2050. If we are to reach it in aggregate, the rest of us have to also do it by 2050. So that is really where there's contention. Can India say net zero by 2050? And does that meet Mr. Prabhu's definition of what we think of as within the bounds of feasibility? I think most of us would worry about whether it's in the bounds of feasibility. I think few of us would claim to know for certain. And I don't think any of us would say, let's not do anything. So so what we want to do actually emerges from this. What we want to do, I think, is also this common ground. We all agree India should seize the moment. We should try and drive in the direction of a low carbon economy, because we think there are possible, very highly likely developmental gains to be made, which are going to be made more likely if we put our minds to it. Developmental gains in terms of jobs, technology innovation, low carbon futures, co-benefits around air and energy security, and so on and so forth. So what we want to do, I think, we are broadly, I would, and maybe I'm being presumptuous here, but I would say that we are broadly in agreement. Where it's a little less clear is what we should say. And what we should say, because we are in a dynamic of a Paris Agreement where we have to say something in the context of an international agreement to which we will be held. Now, I am approaching this with the presumption that nobody here wants to suggest India say something that we don't intend to stand by, right? We want to be a legitimate international actor, compliant with both soft and hard international law. So it's from that perspective that I have argued that we just do not know. We just do not know well enough if net zero by 2050 will expose India's poor to costs, because it would be the largest, fastest decarbonization in history. We know this because we have a few models. We have a few models that are explicitly net zero. We have a few models that look at trajectories, and they all suggest that this will be an extraordinarily heavy lift, and it will be a much heavier lift than any other country, major economy certainly, is being asked to do. And so I should also add a caveat here. Anshu summarized what my op-ed said with reference to the headline. I think we all know that the headlines are not something we control. The papers control them. It's better to go to the text. So my point was that net zero by 2050 is something we would be really reaching as a hard pledge. Having heard and had conversations with people, I think that we have to be cautious also not to walk away from the value of net zero as an aspirational role. At the end, we all have to get to zero. Ideally, real zero, not net zero. So I'm fine with it being an aspirational pledge. But what should we say? I feel we should say something based on what drives real change in India. Do I have one more minute, Anshu, or am I done? One more minute? Okay. So now what drives real change in India? I think there is real space for discussion. I think we have a history of Indian processes being driven by, in productive ways largely, by international processes. NAPCC came because we had to say something at a G8 meeting. It is what academics called, to begin with, a performative institution, which then actually took on real life and real meaning and made real things happen. So international processes and pressures have been helpful in opening doors. What would open those doors in India today? My own feeling is that our policymaking establishment, our research establishment, our industry establishment works well around sectors. We have sectoral epistemic communities. We know that decarbonizing electricity requires not just net zero stories, it requires stories about coal, just transition, discom financing, bailouts, etc. We need a level of granularity that allows us to have that story. That's why I think the most productive NDC pledge should be around sectoral pledges. That's whether we should be as concrete as we can. We can aspire to net zero. Last sentence, Ashu. We can aspire to net zero. And we can claim that these sectoral pledges commit us to doing something in the next 5 to 10 years. And that actually makes us more ambitious because we're much more concrete in what we're saying. So I don't think we need to be shy about those as something substantial we're bringing to the table. Thanks.
Thank you, Navroz. Thank you so much.